President Biden is about to address the nation on a dark weekend in America. One day after a gunman takes aim at former President Donald Trump on the campaign trail.
It just went pop, 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 pop. I looked at President Trump, and that's when he went down.
Tonight, inside the assassination attempt.
We noticed a guy crawling up the roof 50 feet away from us.
Urgent new questions about security and about the gunman. Who was he? The latest on an all-out investigation.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Tom Yamas and Hallie Jackson.
Hey, good evening. I am Tom Yamas reporting tonight from Butler, Pennsylvania, where former President Trump was wounded in an assassination attempt last night.
And I'm Hallie Jackson reporting tonight from Washington, where any moment President Biden is set to speak from the Oval Office. The FBI says it believes the suspected shooter acted alone with an AR-style rifle purchased legally. And now new questions for the Secret Service about how this attempted assassination could have happened. President Biden saying there's no place in America for this kind of violence and sharing he has spoken briefly with Mr. Trump since the shooting. The president's last Oval Office address was 9 months ago when he spoke about the war in Gaza. For President Biden, this is a significant moment with the eyes of the nation now on him. We're going to go now to President Biden in the Oval Office.
I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors. We're friends, co-workers, citizens, and most importantly, we're fellow Americans. We must stand together. Yesterday's shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania calls on all of us to take a step back, take stock of where we are, how we go forward from here. Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured. I spoke with him last night, and I'm grateful. He's doing well, and Jill and I keep him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victims who was killed. Corey was a husband, a father, a volunteer firefighter, a hero, sheltering his family from those bullets. We should all hold his family and all those injured in our prayers. Earlier today, I spoke about an ongoing investigation. We do not know the motive of the shooter yet. We don't know his opinions or affiliations. We don't know whether he had help or support, or if he communicated with anyone else. Law enforcement professionals, as I speak, are investigating those questions. Tonight, I want to speak to what we do know. A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We cannot, we must not go down this road in America. We've traveled it before throughout our history. Violence has never been the answer. Whether it's with members of Congress of both parties being targeted and shot, or a violent mob attacking the Capitol on January 6th, or a brutal attack on the spouse of former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, or information and intimidation on election officials, or the kidnapping plot against the sitting governor, or an attempted assassination on Donald Trump. There is no place in America for this kind of violence, for any violence ever, period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized. You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down. We all have a responsibility to do that. Yes, we have deeply felt strong disagreements. The stakes in this election are enormously high. I've said it many times that the choice in this election we make in this election is going to shape the future of America and the world for decades to come. I believe that with all my soul. I know that millions of my fellow Americans believe it as well. And some have a different view as to the direction our country should take. Disagreement is inevitable in American democracy. It's part of human nature. But politics must never be a literal battlefield, or God forbid, a killing field. I believe politics ought to be an arena for peaceful debate, to pursue justice, to make decisions guided by the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. We stand for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. All of us now face a time of testing as the election approaches. And the higher the stakes, the more fervent the passions become. This places an added burden on each of us to ensure that no matter how strong our convictions, We must never descend into violence. The Republican convention will start tomorrow. I have no doubt they'll criticize my record and offer their own vision for this country. I'll be traveling this week making the case for our record and the vision, my vision of the country, our vision. I'll continue to speak out strongly for our democracy, stand up for our Constitution and the rule of law, to call for action at the ballot box, no violence on our streets. That's how democracy should work. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets. The power to change America should always rest in the hands of the people, not in the hands of a would-be assassin. You know, the path forward through competing visions of the campaign should always be resolved peacefully, not through acts of violence. You know, we're blessed to live in the greatest country on earth, and I believe that with every soul, every power of my being. So tonight, I'm asking every American to recommit, to make America, think about it. What's made America so special? Here in America, everyone must be treated with dignity and respect, and hate must have no safe harbor. Here in America, we need to get out of our silos, where we only listen to those with whom we agree, where misinformation is rampant, where foreign actors fan the flames of our division to shape the outcomes consistent with their interests, not ours. Let's remember, here in America, while unity is the most elusive of goals right now, nothing is more important for us now than standing together. We can do this. You know, from the beginning, our founders understood the power of passion. So they created a democracy that gave reason and balance a chance to prevail over brute force. That's the American we must be. An American democracy where arguments are made in good faith. An American democracy where the rule of law is respected. An American democracy where decency, dignity, fair play aren't just quaint notions, but living, breathing realities. We owe that to those who come before us, to those who gave their lives for this country. We owe that to ourselves. We owe it to our children and our grandchildren. Look, let's never lose sight of who we are. Let's remember we are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. God bless you all. May God protect our troops.
You have been listening to President Biden with a plea to Americans to lower the temperature in political rhetoric. The president strongly condemning political violence and violence of all stripes, saying that essentially in this country, we resolve our differences at the ballot box and not with bullets. He also nodded to the political realities of the presidential campaign and the Republican National Convention set to begin this week in Milwaukee. Our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, is here in Washington. And Peter, a critical moment here for President Biden.
Hallie, that's exactly right. The president wasting no time tonight making clear what his message is, which is that all Americans need to lower the temperature as we head into this campaign season, these final 4 months ahead of the election this November. I'm struck by a couple of things, and one, how central the topic of political violence has been to President Biden. You'll remember it was what happened in Charlottesville in 2017 that was really the motivating factor for his decision to run. What happened on January 6th that ultimately has driven a lot of the course of his time in office, his desire to protect democracy. One of the unique challenges for the president going forward, I think, is going to be how he is able to keep delivering this forceful contrast on the campaign trail with former President Trump. We counted at least 12 times where he has condemned political violence over the course of the last several years here. I'm also struck by just how the dominant storyline in a political campaign can change overnight here. What was only a couple of days ago a conversation about President Biden and his ability to serve another 4 years, with many Democratic defections speaking out, saying that they were concerned about whether he should be at the top of the ticket. Right now, this gives him a chance to sort of rehabilitate his image, to focus on his responsibilities as president and try to demonstrate to those American voters and to all American viewers that he has what in effect is the temperament and what it takes to serve as president for another 4 years. Hallie.
Peter Alexander in Washington, thank you. Our senior White House correspondent, Gabe Gutierrez, is also with us. And Gabe, President Biden choosing this setting intentionally here, a solemn speech, solemn remarks to the American people from that setting in the Oval Office. It is not something that we see every day, and that is for a reason, Gabe.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Hallie. The stakes are incredibly high here. And President Biden is saying today that he spoke with former President Trump last night, and he characterized the conversation as short but good. Now, we are still awaiting any initial comment from former President Trump or his campaign, but shortly before the speech, the former president did post on social media a message of, quote, "Unite America." He also posted that just before making his way to the Republican National Convention, which begins tomorrow. And in another social media post, the former president said that he initially considered delaying his trip to Milwaukee by 2 days, but he decided against it, he said, because he didn't want a, quote, potential assassin to force a change in the schedule. Now, of course, Hallie, as you know, we are still awaiting the former president to announce his vice presidential pick, potentially by tomorrow. Hallie?
Gabe Gutierrez, a busy week ahead after an extraordinary weekend in American history. I want to bring back in Tom Yamas now in Pennsylvania. And Tom, you know, on the ground there, the questions now around the Secret Service, which was in charge of security at this rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. And moving forward, the question of how this could have happened, this attempted assassination against the presumptive Republican nominee and a former president, Tom.
And Hallie, it was so important for the president to address the nation tonight because there are so many people here that attended the rally just behind me, right, that are searching for answers. And even though they may not share the same politics as President Biden, they do want the tone, the temperature, everything to just come down a little bit. What they've witnessed here, a death, 2 injuries, and nearly a presidential assassination, it is all too much for any American. And we do want to bring back to what happened here just 24 hours ago behind me, former President Trump speaking underneath that American flag here in Butler, Pennsylvania. We're getting new videos showing just how the assassination attempt played out, how the Secret Service reacted to try to determine why a lone gunman tried to kill Donald Trump.
Take a look at what happened.
Tonight, the FBI and Secret Service are trying to figure out how a 20-year-old shooter was able to fire at least 6 rounds at former President Donald Trump and why he did it.
That's the most surprising thing to me when we have a former president here, that a guy was able to get, as you say, 150 yards away, able to get up on a roof and be able to take a shot.
Richard Golddinger is the district attorney for Butler County, Pennsylvania, where the shooting occurred.
What goes through your head?
Honestly, it's shocking.
On a phone call with the media earlier today, Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray said the feds are examining the gunman's phone and other electronic devices. Even though they've received more than 2,000 tips, they haven't yet figured out the shooter's motivation or ideology. Today, in remarks hours before his Oval Office address this evening, President Biden said he wants answers fast.
I'm instructed that this investigation be thorough and swift, and the investigators will have every resource they need to get this done.
The president expressed outrage at the shooting that also claimed the life of 1 man and left 2 others in critical condition.
There is no place in America for this kind of violence, or any violence for that matter.
It was just last night that thousands gathered in rural Pennsylvania, a place called Butler. The MAGA world revving up for a boisterous rally with the presumptive Republican presidential nominee.
This is a big crowd.
The excitement level stratospheric, with the GOP convention just a day away.
We have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here.
On stage, Donald Trump launched into one of his favorite subjects, immigration, and then 6:11 p.m. This.
Take a look at what happened.
It seemed like nothing at first, maybe a couple of firecrackers going off. But Trump, hand to ear, suddenly dropped down behind the podium.
Ready, move!
It was law enforcement's worst fear. Secret Service agents swarmed the stage, huddling around the former president. Trump, blood streaking his face, pumped his fist in the air as he was rushed into an armored vehicle. In the stands, shock and fear.
At first, I didn't know if they were firecrackers. There were 6 pops. It just went pop, 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 pop.
In the bleachers behind us, somebody got popped. Somebody got killed.
The man beside me suffered a gunshot wound to the head. was instantly killed.
One spectator died, 2 others were injured. The shooter was on a roof less than 200 yards from the stage, taken down by Secret Service counter snipers on another roof. The shooter, later identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, a registered Republican with no criminal record. Campaign finance reports show he gave a $15 donation to a progressive action committee in 2021, the day President Joe Biden was sworn into office. The Trump team put out word that the former president was fine after receiving medical attention at a nearby hospital. On Truth Social, Mr. Trump thanked the Secret Service and extended his condolences to the family of the spectator who died. Early Sunday morning, Donald Trump went home to New Jersey. His ordeal over, the country just beginning to absorb what had happened. Today brought more details of the criminal investigation. The FBI called the attack a case of domestic terrorism and said agents had found a suspicious device in the alleged shooter's car. A county bomb squad also told NBC News it had searched Crooks' home last night as bewildered neighbors looked on.
It's a quiet neighborhood, and what goes on in everybody's homes, we just don't know. You know, what people are going through in their own life, we just don't know.
Pennsylvania State Police also identified the man killed at yesterday's rally as Corey Comparatori, a firefighter and father of 2. Governor Josh Shapiro ordered flags be flown at half-staff.
I just spoke to Corey's wife and Corey's 2 daughters. Corey was a girl dad. Corey was a firefighter. Corey went to church every Sunday. Corey loved his community.
Sir, have you had...
Meanwhile, leaders from both sides of the aisle took to the morning news shows. House Speaker Mike Johnson appeared on Today.
We've got to turn the rhetoric down. We've got to turn the temperature down in this country. We need leaders of all parties on both sides to call that out and make sure that happens so that we can go forward and maintain our free society that we all are blessed to have.
Amen. Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons echoed the thought on Meet the Press.
I'd urge folks to turn off their phones and get off of social media today and take some time with your family and reflect on who we are as a nation and who we want to be.
Not everyone was quick to put aside the partisan rhetoric. Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance, cited as one of Trump's possible VP picks, blamed the attack via social media on the Democratic Party. That ominous note sounded as the former president landed in Milwaukee for tomorrow's kickoff of the Republican National Convention.
And tonight we are also learning about the 20-year-old suspect, Thomas Matthew Crooks. You saw him there in my report. NBC's Tom Winter has late details that are coming in. Tom, today we got some new photos and some new information about this man.
That's exactly right. And we do have some new reporting tonight that broke just before coming on the air tonight, Tom, and that is that the United States Secret Service, according to multiple sources to NBC News, say that they identified this location where this shooting allegedly occurred as a potential vulnerability in the days before the event. The Secret Service tonight, in a statement from a spokesperson, says that they had designated that rooftop under the jurisdiction of local law enforcement, and that's a common practice with securing these outdoor rallies and these outdoor events. You're looking at a map of that there, Tom. Obviously, this is something that's going to be an ongoing concern here as we go through the coming months and the campaigning across the country as these candidates traverse to various events. And we know certainly as it pertains to former President Trump, he very much enjoys these outdoor rallies and engaging with his various supporters. And so that's something that's obviously going to have to be looked at here. As far as the rest of this investigation, we received a briefing from the FBI and their top people that are overseeing this investigation earlier this evening. They say that they had no prior contacts with this alleged shooter leading up to this event, and that they have his cell phone. It's been sent to their laboratory in Quantico, Virginia for examination. We'll see what they get off of that, Tom.
Tom, before you go, I want to tell our viewers exactly the area you're talking about. It's just over my left shoulder here where that tree line is. It's about 150 yards from where former President Trump was speaking. There's always going to be areas in these zones, if you will, these rallies that are outside the perimeter. The question tonight, right, Tom, is why this area was so close. And the shocking new reporting that you just told our viewers that they knew about this area. I was just out there. It's a massive field. A woman who lives next door telling me it was a free-for-all. Anybody could just walk up, and as we know, that would-be assassin found it a prime opportunity to climb up onto that roof and point his rifle at former President Trump and pull that trigger. Do we know why, if they knew it was so vulnerable, they didn't go in there and start investigating?
So I think that's going to be the big question. The first thing they had to worry about last night was obviously the health of former President Trump. And then from there, they had to figure out where he was going to go from there. They have not ruled out that this is only a lone gunman. Right now, that's the belief, but they haven't ruled out that there's not somebody else or some other individuals at play, though they think that there's no imminent risk to public safety. But they needed to get Trump to a spot where they could secure him last night. And I think now, 24 plus hours into this, there's an ability for them to take a look into it. The FBI said this afternoon on their briefing that they intend to conduct a full timeline of this incident and this investigation. So not just specific to the suspect, but the events leading up to it in the hours beforehand. So that should help us get a better understanding, Tom, to exactly your question, which is, was this supposed to be guarded by local law enforcement? Was this supposed to be handled by the Secret Service? And of course, the ultimate question is, what can be done to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Tom Winter for us. And as we investigate that shooter, we also will never forget the victims here. A 50-year-old father killed as he protected his wife and daughters from the gunfire. And in addition to the president, 2 other men were wounded in the attack. Dasha Burns has more on their stories.
Take a look at what happened.
Tonight, Pennsylvania State Police releasing the names of 3 victims shot during the attempted assassination of former President Trump. 57-year-old David Dutch and 74-year-old James Copenhaver, now both in stable condition. 50-year-old Corey Comparator was killed in the crossfire. Joseph Maine was just feet away from Comparator when the shots rang out.
I heard several gunshots. It was rather chaotic at that point because half the people were looking because they thought it was fireworks. I knew it was gunshots right away.
Comparator was a 30-year veteran firefighter and former chief. He died shielding his wife and daughters. The station now reeling from the loss.
That this close to home, and then right in our neighborhood, we find out that one of our own his life was taken too early. It's tough. It's hard to process.
Today, the men hanging a symbol of mourning on the firehouse and on his locker, where his uniform still hangs.
What's it like to stand here next to his locker where you spent time with him and to see?
It's heartbreaking, but it's a true honor being able to speak about how good of a man he was.
For people that didn't get the privilege of knowing Corey, what do you want the world to know about him?
That they missed out on getting to know a great man, a God-fearing, family-loving man. He'd do anything for anyone, and that he was a man full of love. Never knew him to hate anything. He truly lost a good one. It's hard to fathom and believe that it happened and how it happened.
The rally, a nightmare for so many. And how are you feeling right now?
Like my mama instincts were when he grabbed my hand, I knew my son was scared to death because he was holding my hand. He had held my hand since he was probably 5 or 6 years old. And so he held on to my hand, and you can imagine, my heart went into a million pieces. All I kept thinking was, we got to be safe and get out of here.
Images impossible to forget. Aaron Ottenreith was in the first row in front of former President Trump.
That sharpshooter went across. Trump turned his head. His ear must have been nipped.
The chain of events fresh as she recalled them last night.
I feel sad for everybody, you know. I mean, you don't like the guy, don't vote for him. Don't kill him. We love the guy. We're going to vote for him.
A tense election cycle taking a devastating turn.
Dasha Burns joins us now live here. And Dasha, it wasn't only the families, the people that were here that were traumatized. People were watching this all over the country and also had to see these horrific images.
Yeah, and of course, as you well know, Tom, Trump rallies attract supporters from all over the region. People drive for hours from nearby towns, from faraway towns. They wait in line all day for these events. So the traumatic impact does not stop at the borders of Butler County or even the state of Pennsylvania. People who were witness to this event and people who watched it unfold.
And I don't know if the video does it justice, but there were so many children here. There were so many little kids here. I heard from parents all day today talking about how they were protecting their kids.
I think one of the most memorable and frankly haunting pieces of this for me, when I think back on it, is the screams of the children. You can hear them, and every time I hear that video play back, that's what sticks with me, Tom.
Dasha Burns, our reporter who was here live on the scene as it was happening. Dasha, we thank you for your reporting. I want to send it back now to Hallie Jackson live in Washington. Hallie?
Hey, Tom, it is so difficult, I think, for so many people to hear the stories that you are telling, that Dasha is telling, considering when folks show up to a political rally, especially in a community like this. This is so-called Trump country. This is a very Republican part of Pennsylvania. Talking to folks who had been there, they were excited to show up and to celebrate the presumptive Republican nominee in this moment, in this critical moment when about 24 hours ago, the biggest question was going to be who would Donald Trump pick to be his running mate. And obviously, it is a very different political universe that we are looking at now, with so many lives changed forever. At this moment now, the question is turning to how this could have happened, from people on the ground to members of Congress. How did a shooter get such a sightline to former President Trump? How did this shooter get so close? Our Ken Delanian has more.
Tonight, 24 hours after the alarming assassination attempt on former President Trump, growing questions about what many in law enforcement are calling an enormous security failure.
If that bullet was 2 inches to the right, it would have penetrated the former president's forehead, and we would have a great American tragedy on our hands.
The Secret Service was responsible for security at the rally, and tonight is facing an independent review of how the shooting happened. This video shows the alleged shooter on a roof just outside the rally's security perimeter, firing shots before he was taken out by a Secret Service counter-sniper team. That quick response has been praised as life-saving, but former law enforcement officials say the entire incident never should have happened.
The buck does stop with the U.S. Secret Service. It's their plan. You're responsible, so you can't deflect blame on anybody else, and you have to make sure all these layers are put into place.
Former President Trump was speaking from a stage in a field. The shooter was only 148 yards away, on top of a roof, one of only a few rooftops in the rural area. A question tonight, why was that rooftop not secured?
So if you look at an aerial shot of that area, maybe there is half a dozen roofs, but there's not thousands of roofs. It could have been covered for a couple hours, and it should have been.
Also, witnesses say they saw the gunman and tried to warn police. The question now, were those witnesses ignored?
We're pointing at them. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police are like, huh, what? You know, like they didn't know what was going on.
This reaction from an FBI agent at a press conference overnight.
She was able to get off like 4 or 5 shots.
It is surprising. But again, to get all the details of that will come out later in the investigation.
Tonight, the Secret Service did not respond to questions from NBC News, but is denying allegations it rebuffed requests from the Trump campaign for more resources.
Ken is joining us now. And Ken, the Speaker of the House of Representatives is already calling for an investigation now congressionally into what he sees as potential failures from the Secret Service. That is something that could begin as soon as Congress gets back into town just a couple of weeks from now. What would a timeline on any kind of investigation look like?
Well, first of all, Hallie, President Biden said today that he would make public the results of the independent review that he ordered. And as you said, House Republicans announced they would conduct their own investigation, including calling the Secret Service director to testify. One Democratic lawmaker today, a Democrat, called this the worst Secret Service failure since Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981. And you heard Tom Winter report earlier that the Secret Service was aware that there was a vulnerability in that rooftop, but they have not explained why it was not protected. They're sort of seeming to blame local officials, but what experts tell me is ultimately it was their scene. The responsibility lies with the Secret Service. Hallie?
Ken Delanian, thank you very much. I want to bring in somebody now who has a deep expertise in this, NBC News law enforcement analyst and former Secret Service agent, Evie Poumpouras, who's been a part of our special coverage here. So, Evie, we were showing that map of where the security perimeter was, where this building was that the shooter was on top of. Let's talk about sight lines here, because one of the big rules in security protection is if you can see it, it can see you. Understanding that this building was outside of the official security perimeter, how is it possible that it was left apparently unprotected? Talk us through what would have gone into that decision making.
So when you make a security plan, you are looking to secure the immediate area. I have my dais, the stage, my people. I'm going to set up my magnetometer. So I have that inner area. That's hardcore secure. Here's the thing. In that area, that is where I'm going to put my Secret Service personnel. I want that manpower closest to the president. Now, the outer security area where these buildings fall into, that is typically where I'm going to ask, or U.S. Secret Service is going to ask local police departments, hey, can you manpower this? And I'm suspecting that this is what happened. You typically wouldn't put an agent that far out. You want to keep your agents close by. So what I think is going to be happening here is they're going to be looking at who had been assigned there. Was it local police department that was responsible? They're saying that they knew that this was a vulnerability, and it's probably they decided we'll have local police. Now, the only question is, if you are assigning local police, then why weren't they able to access the rooftop? And then how was the shooter able to access the rooftop? So if you do have your personnel there, where were they? Why weren't they able to get to the rooftop? Why weren't they able to secure the area? So I think that that's going to be happening. Look, again, at the end, the orchestrator, the conductor of all this is the Secret Service. They lay the blueprint. However, they do rely on manpower from local entities. You go to them and say, how many officers do you have? How many state police do you have? How can you help me? And that's typically what happens here. So I think we're going to be seeing now the layout of what the plan was, who had been assigned the responsibility of securing that area, and then, well, what happened? And was it one person for that entire area? That would be questionable. Can one person actually really secure all those buildings, all that movement, vehicles, parking lots, trees? There's so much going on. So I would question, well, if they did put local police, how many bodies did they put there?
Evie, former President Trump has indicated that he will not be scared away from the Republican National Convention happening in Milwaukee beginning tomorrow here. In your view, based on what you know, should the Secret Service be reconsidering the security posture there at this point?
I would not, because here's the thing. This is an open rally, and these are very vulnerable. They're probably one of the hardest security advances to do. You're so overexposed. When you are at a facility, even though there are a lot of people, you've got walls, you can lock it down. So I know that once somebody passes my security checkpoint, that's all I have to worry about what's inside. You don't have this outside element. I also think everybody's going to throw all the resources that they have, not just the Secret Service, but Milwaukee PD, the state police for Wisconsin. Everybody's going to throw all their manpower. I wouldn't be surprised if they reach out to federal agencies like the FBI or Homeland Security and say, hey, we need extra bodies to stand post. They called it standing post when you secure the area. I think everything's going to be super locked down and tight. I don't think that there will be an issue there.
Evie Poumpouras, we're glad to have you. Thank you, former Secret Service agent. We appreciate you being with us. It is Milwaukee, of course, at the center of that white-hot spotlight on security. Our Vaughn Hilliard is there on the ground. Vaughn, give us a sense of what it's like, what you've been seeing.
Right, Hallie. Your conversations are worth noting because the Secret Service here, they designated this event as a national special security event. Much like the inauguration is and State of the Union addresses, this is where the Department of Homeland Security, the Secretary, designates an event and puts the U.S. Secret Service at the top of orchestrating and working with the multiple law enforcement agencies to oversee this particular event. And that is what has happened here over the last 18 months for the Republican National Convention. And for the first time, a U.S. Secret Service official began to answer questions about what unfolded yesterday with the attempted assassination, but sidestepped directly answering any detailed questions about what actually unfolded in Pennsylvania, instead suggesting that the focus needed to be on what was happening here in Milwaukee. And I said, to what extent should Donald Trump, his family, and those going to this convention here trust that the safety and security is going to be intact here? And that official made it clear that the last 18 months of planning has created a perimeter around here that would guarantee that. Of course, Donald Trump is now here in Milwaukee, his campaign team as well, and most of the more than 2,000 delegates are here in the city. Of course, tomorrow is when the convention gavels in, Hallie.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in Milwaukee. Thank you. I want to turn back now to Butler, Pennsylvania, where we find my colleague Tom Yamas. Hey, Tom.
Hallie, thank you for that. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, my interview with a doctor who ran into danger. And we'll take a deeper look at the overheated rhetoric dividing the country. Can anyone cool down this political climate? Our special report continues in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Sally. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a flight nurse on a helicopter that specializes in trauma. I've been doing flight nursing for 24 years. I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to keep up. I wanted all the boost I could get. I heard about Prevagen from a friend. I read the clinical study on it, and it had good reviews. I've been taking Prevagen now for 5 years, and it's really helped me stay sharp and present. It's really worked for me.
Prevagen, at stores everywhere without a prescription.
Summer in Britain.
Come on! Get back!
Stream the best of British crime drama on BritBox.
Shopify helps you sell at every stage of your business. So you can sell it online, take it in person, and go big, like 1 million orders big. Whatever the stage, businesses that grow with Shopify.
Tomorrow, an NBC News exclusive. Lester Holt, one-on-one with President Biden. The full unedited interview, followed by special coverage of the Republican National Convention. It all starts tomorrow at 9 p.m. on NBC and NBC News Now.
The Kettle River Furniture and Bedding Summer Clearance and Showroom Sale is on now. So for a limited time, there's incredible once-a-year savings everywhere you look. See reductions of 20, 40, 50, even 80% off. Living rooms, dining, bedrooms, mattresses, reclining, significantly reduced. Markdowns on top brands like La-Z-Boy, Flex Steel, Sealy, Canadel, and many more. The incredible Summer Clearance and Showroom Sale for a limited time only, and only at Kettle River Furniture and Bedding, Edwardsville.
This is a pivotal moment for St. Louis and our country. I'm Wesley Bell. I reformed the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, protecting women's health care by refusing to prosecute abortions and getting wrongful convictions overturned. In Congress, I'll fight for a progressive agenda, like lowering the cost of prescription drugs and bringing back the child tax credit. That's why I approve this message.
The Weather Impact Forecast from 5 on your side, focused on you.
We are back with this NBC News special coverage, and tonight this extraordinary series of events. That attempted assassination on former President Trump has led to a pause in the sharpest rhetoric of the presidential campaign, with President Biden trying to console and unify a nation in shock after an attack on his predecessor and potential successor. Here's Gabe Gutierrez.
Tonight, President Biden seeking to reassure a wounded nation.
An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything. It's not who we are as a nation.
This morning, he met in the Situation Room with the vice president and other top officials, including the attorney general, the FBI director, and the Homeland Security secretary. Then, he ordered an independent review of security at yesterday's rally. He also had this message for his political rival.
Last night, I spoke with Donald Trump. I'm sincerely grateful that he's doing well and recovering. And we had a short but good conversation. Jill and I are keeping him and his family in our prayers.
A remarkable turn of events when just 2 days earlier, he'd been out on the campaign trail.
I know him. Donald Trump is a loser.
The raging debate on Capitol Hill over whether President Biden should leave the race after his rough debate performance now seems to have stalled. Instead, the charged rhetoric of both campaigns now under scrutiny from both the former president.
Despite the hatred and anger of the radical left lunatics who want to destroy our country, we will make America great again.
And the current one. Republicans criticizing President Biden's comments to donors this past week that Democrats needed to focus on beating Trump, adding, quote, "We're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in the bullseye. He's gotten away with doing nothing for the last 10 days.
I know that he didn't mean what is being implied there, but that kind of language on either side should be called out.
It had been 4 decades since an American president was shot. Well, back then, the nation rallied around Ronald Reagan. The challenge now, unifying a much more deeply polarized country.
Unity is the most elusive goal of all, but nothing is important than that right now, unity. We'll debate and we'll disagree. That's not going to change. We're going to not lose sight, in fact, who we are as Americans.
Gabe is joining us again from the White House. And Gabe, President Biden is making changes to his plans this week after that attempted assassination against former President Trump.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. The president had been scheduled to head to Austin, Texas tomorrow to speak at the LBJ Library commemorating the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. That trip has now been postponed. His interview with our colleague Lester Holt will happen, but here at the White House. And as for the vice president, her campaign stop to Florida on Tuesday has also been rescheduled. Hallie?
Gabe, thank you. And we will, of course, have more special coverage tomorrow night with that interview between Lester and President Biden. Let's take it back now to Tom, who's in Butler for us tonight.
Hallie, thank you. We want to turn now to the stories of bravery emerging from yesterday's chaos. Among those who jumped into action without hesitation, ER doctor Jim Sweetland. You see him here, his shirt bloody on the right hand of your screen from performing CPR mere minutes after the attack. I spoke with him about those moments earlier today. Doctor, talk to me about that moment again of when you jumped into action. And did you think at any point you could maybe save his life, or was the wound so bad?
When I came upon him, I thought the wound was a fatal wound. It was a small bore that was right here above the ear. That's where snipers like to hit. And I'm not a ballistic specialist. I've never served in the armed forces, and I've never been on an active shooting scene. But I've seen the results when people make it to my emergency department.
You know, Doctor, something that stood out to me was there were a handful of people like you that when this active shooter situation was happening, they jumped into action to help out. Why do you think that was?
I think Americans love to help. Those two individuals, I've been called a hero. I don't know that I'm a hero. Every hero needs a helper. You know, Superman is Lois Lane. Batman as Robin. I needed these two people to get this fellow up. I couldn't have done it, and they did it. And you could tell they were scared, but they did it. And other people came. There was when I got down to this gentleman, which was within 45 seconds, someone was already applying pressure to that wound, and that continued. Nobody knew CPR. I did that by myself. That's okay. But people were there and helped.
I think I saw an interview with you earlier yesterday. Were you covered in, I guess, sweat and blood?
I was covered with blood. My face was covered. So was my shirt. I had a USA shirt on, a Trump hat on. I also had some brain matter on me. After that interview, and I was in shock with that. I was in disbelief, just shock. And after that interview to the left, and I got to give this guy tremendous credit, was a Army combat veteran. And, excuse me, after the interview, he came up to me and said, "Brother, there's blood on your face." I said, "Oh, okay." And he gave me his water bottle, and I washed it off, and I looked at my shirt, and I washed off as much as I could. And then I handed the bottle back. He wouldn't take it. And then he stepped into me, put his hand on his shoulder, and said, "Are you okay, brother?" And I saw the combat veteran across the brim of his hat, and I said, something like, "You've seen this too." And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'm okay, and thank you for what you did." And we hugged.
Yeah, it's likely a moment you're never going to forget.
Never. And that guy was an American who was helping me after I tried to help Corey. And to me, that's America.
Dr. Sweetland, an ER doctor who happened to be here in the rally watching former President Trump. He tried to administer CPR. He did to Corey, but unfortunately that bullet wound was too severe. I do want to bring in another witness to yesterday's incident, Paul Costco. He's an amateur photographer who was on the scene, and we want to show you some of his stunning images he captured. The moment former President Trump took cover with Secret Service, but also the moments right after he was shot and he was ushered off stage. Paul, during one of those commercial breaks, you were showing me the photos up close. And you actually have zoomed in on some of the photos to President Trump. And even though this is graphic, I think it's important. You said you've noticed from your photography that it looks like the former president has lost a piece of his ear?
Yes, that is correct. As far as on the right side, if you zoomed in, the top piece, when the bullet struck, it took out a little piece of the president's right upper ear.
So when we talk about inches, that the former President Trump came within inches of dying,
absolutely.
That is not an exaggeration. That is facts.
As being there, if the president's team ahead of time that showed the immigration charts up there, if he didn't turn his head towards those charts, that would have been a direct side hit to the head, and it probably would have been a JFK moment, so which would have been absolutely terrible.
And again, we're still thinking about the young father who lost his life and those two other victims who are injured and are recovering. You had the sense, you're an amateur photographer, but you had the sense to keep taking photos as this was happening. What kicked in for you as you were watching this?
Well, as it happened, I went to the dirt just like thousands of people in front of Trump. I was 25 feet from the podium in the 10 o'clock position. And we, as far as with out there in the audience, didn't realize the severity of it. We heard the pops of the gun. We did, but we didn't think, we were thinking it was firecrackers and that. So the severity didn't really happen until we lost sight of the president. And then everybody was got silent. There were people in the field that were saying, get down, get down. I hit the dirt just like thousands of other people there. But when they brought the president up, after the cluster of Secret Service people there, that's when people thought he was okay, especially on the backside, because they didn't see as far as the blood that was on the right side. So, and then they start whisking away, and then pandemonium took
One of the
over.
cruel realities of yesterday, and when you see this video, it kind of hit me today that there is that moment where former President Trump raises his fist, he gets up.
Yes.
Clearly, he's been hit, but he's not dying, and he mouths fight, and people are cheering, but at the same time, someone is dying, and nobody knows that except the people that were next to him.
You're absolutely correct. Nobody in the audience knew who was hit, how severe they were hit. Again, our condolences to the families as far as that lost their husband and father and so forth, and also the two other ones that got hit in the abdomen area. Nobody in the audience did that. We were all cheering for someone that was almost beat to the ground coming up, but then after the reveal of the blood, everybody started. It wasn't a cheer. It was more, I would say, a fear.
You've seen this unfold in front of your eyes. You've seen it unfold behind the lens of your camera. When you see those images, what do you think?
What do I think? This is not America. That's what I want to get clear as far as with people out there. This is not America. I am a Republican, but I'm American first, and I want to extend as far as to the health and safety to President Trump, but also as a Republican reaching out to President Biden and his family, because this is also difficult on their side. We as a country have to stop this logger jam, and we got to start opening our hands. And that starts with everybody. That starts with both parties, and it even starts with you guys as far as on the media, and all the media. So we've got to lower it because it's America.
Right. Okay. Paul, we thank you for your time. Paul Clover, we appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your photos.
Thank you for your comments.
This moment in history is already being defined by these arresting images. Rahima Ellis with the remarkable stories behind some of the photographers and photographs.
The defiant picture. The former president's fist raised, his face streaked with his own blood. A jarring image that's hard to look at, but must be seen. Taken by photographer Evan Vucci from the Associated Press.
The moment I heard the shots being fired, I knew that this was a moment in American history that had to be documented. I mean, it's our job as journalists to do this work.
New York Times photographer Doug Mills also capturing these images. A bullet frozen on its path to its intended target, grazing Trump's ear, his hand pulling back to reveal blood. Secret Service agents acting in unison, rushing in, blanketing the presumptive Republican nominee. And this image of the former president still surrounded by agents on the stage floor. All the while, officers standing at the ready, not knowing what else could come. The former president's shirt opened, his face bloodied, rushed off stage, a shoe left behind. Before the gunshots, a crowd of supporters. After, an empty stage, a withered flag. And spectators overwhelmed with sadness, their faces in disbelief. Images captured in a matter of moments, but now seared in the nation's collective memory. Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
And Hallie, we know so many of these photographers, the photographers that were mentioned there, that were interviewed, that took those images. And even though we work in television, a medium that usually works with video, we always use those stills, right? Because they freeze those moments in time. And when you watch the moments of yesterday, regardless of what point, I mean, each photograph takes you back to what happened. And we've seen these images now hundreds, maybe thousands of times at this point. And every time I look at this, I still can't believe what just happened, right? I can't believe what happened in this country. I can't believe how people here reacted, how those heroes, those helpers, and I also can't believe that someone came to this rally loaded with an AR-15 style rifle and decided to pull that trigger.
In so many ways, Tom, it is the power of photography, the power of these images that we are seeing and have been seeing on display. In so many ways, that first draft of history and one that has rocketed around the world. We're going to continue our deep dive into the American history books and the lessons learned from dark chapters gone by with more of our special coverage when we continue.
If you're 50 or over, you can be taking advantage of everything AARP has to offer right now. Join AARP for $12 for 1 year, and your second membership is free. Get instant access to discounts on everyday purchases, eye care and prescriptions, and tools and tips to help manage your money and maximize your health. Plus, AARP fights to protect your Social Security, Medicare, and more. Join and get an insulated trunk organizer free, plus AARP the magazine. Call or go to joinaarp.org now.
I'm Andrea, and this is why I switched to Shopify. It gave me so much peace of mind. If we make a change, my site's not going to go down. And just knowing that I have a platform that we can rely on, that is gold to us. Start your free trial today.
You owe me 10 grand. Who's this fella calling the shots?
Someone was dead. You can sort it.
No.
Tomorrow on Today, following the attempted assassination of former President Trump. Join today for live coverage on the ground with eyewitness accounts and updates from law enforcement on the ongoing investigation. Tomorrow on Today.
President Trump has made his pick for Congress in Missouri. Dr. Bob Onder has Trump's complete and total endorsement. President Trump is endorsing Dr. Bob Onder because he's a fighter and proven conservative. Trump calls Bob Onder an America First patriot who won't let us down and says his opponent, Kurt Schaefer, is weak on MAGA. Join President Trump. Vote Trump-endorsed candidate Bob Onder for Congress.
I'm Dr. Bob Onder, and I approve this message.
Conservative Kurt Schaefer, the family man who fought to defund Planned Parenthood and won. Conservative Kurt Schaefer, the prosecutor who defied woke liberals and delivered the strongest Second Amendment rights in America. Now Schaefer is ready to take on the open border idiots, deport all illegal aliens, and clamp down on the southern border. Washington will fight him. Mexico will hate him. But conservative Kurt Schaefer will never back down. Paid for by Missouri Conservatives for Congress PAC.
This summer is the perfect time to get away with a great deal on your favorite Hyundai models. All backed by America's best warranty, plus 3 years or 36,000 miles of complimentary maintenance. Add more joy to your journey. Hurry in to the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Get in and get away now. Lease the Elantra for $159 a month or get 1.99% APR for 60 months. Hurry in to the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event.
With the country shaken tonight, the attempted assassination of former President Trump's bringing to mind other attacks on presidential candidates and on sitting presidents. Liz Kreutz revisits America's painful history of political violence.
The assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump has shocked the nation. But that stunning moment is part of a long history of political violence in the U.S. targeting presidents and presidential candidates. In 1865, America's 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, assassinated. Nearly a century later, in 1963, President John F. Kennedy was shot and killed in Dallas while riding in a motorcade. His brother, Robert Kennedy, shot and killed 5 years later in 1968 while campaigning for president. Then, 13 years after that, in 1981, there was the assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan. In recent years, politicians on both sides of the aisle have also been the target of attacks.
like Democratic Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was shot in 2011, and Republican Congressman Steve Scalise, who was shot at a congressional baseball team practice in 2017. Since then, the divisive political climate has escalated even more, leading to the 2020 plot to kill Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and the 2022 attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi.
We cannot condone this.
Both Republicans and Democrats are condemning the attack on Mr. Trump, but the incident only punctuating growing concerns about increasing polarization in the country. A poll from earlier this year found 1 in 5 Americans think violence might be necessary to get the country back on track. Many who witnessed history Saturday say something has to change.
How is this happening in our country today? And why? Why is it happening?
A dangerous reckoning in America, now reaching a boiling point. Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
For more now, I want to bring in presidential historian and NBC News contributor Michael Beschloss. Michael, it's good to be with you tonight as part of our special coverage. We are only about 24 hours or so removed from this attempted assassination on former President Trump, and it feels so immediate, so immediately recent. It's hard to think about how this will be contextualized in the history books, but help us do that. Pull us back up to 30,000 feet and put this moment into some context.
Okay, I'll try. It does seem pretty raw. And Hallie, you're absolutely right. You know, one of the best things about American history and American society is we correct ourselves. We learn lessons from horrible moments. You know, we just heard about Ronald Reagan being shot only a couple months into his presidency. There was an era of brief good feeling that year, and the two parties in Congress got some things done. So as horrible as this was yesterday, if it leads to a campaign that is more devoid of falsehoods, more devoid of personal insults, avoids violence, it certainly will not make up for the horrible event that happened yesterday, that violence in Butler, Pennsylvania, but at least it'll show American society at its best. We always try to do better.
Of course, one of the many differences between now and what happened decades ago, you look at the images from the crowd, almost everybody has a phone in their hand. Almost everybody is capturing the first draft of history, Michael. That plays into this as well.
Absolutely right. You know, Theodore Roosevelt was shot while campaigning in Milwaukee, of all places, in 1912, but people learned about that through newspapers. Imagine if people on their iPhones had seen Theodore Roosevelt being shot in the middle of a speech and saying, I'm going to keep on going on even if I die because what I have to say is so important.
Michael Beschloss, thank you for being with us tonight. Appreciate it. Let's take you back to Butler, Pennsylvania now with Tom. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Hallie. Finally tonight, violence has once again touched American politics, fracturing our trust in each other and in our country in many ways. What's brought us to this point? Where do we go from here? Here's Josh Mankiewicz with a very personal account.
For a lot of people living today, the clock on our long, scary history of political assassinations starts in 1963, when John F. Kennedy was killed in Dallas. Those awful moments changed not only this country, but also the world. They simultaneously became the origin story for generations of conspiracy theories, meaning some of that damage wouldn't be felt for a long time.
I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man.
Now go to 1968. In March of that year, I was 12, a face in the crowd watching a dead president's brother start his campaign for the White House. By the first week in June, Robert Kennedy was gone. Just as terrible, he'd already outlived Martin Luther King, taken by a different assassin or assassins 2 months earlier. Today, we don't just live in a world of too many guns and too much hate, although clearly that does describe us accurately. We also live in an angry country where over the years too many don't trust institutions to deliver or their neighbors to vote the right way. And way too often, someone's answer to that is violence. 1968 and 1972 were election years. The work of assassins, both successful and unsuccessful, changed those campaigns. Will that happen this year? It's already happening. Sometimes in America, your vote counts less than a murderer's bullet. In his announcement, Robert Kennedy said he was running for president because he was convinced this nation was on a perilous course.
And because I have such strong feelings about what must be done, and I feel that I'm obliged to do all that I can.
And unfortunately, the years since have proven him right.
Our thanks to Josh Mankiewicz for that story, and I hope we all have learned something from what happened here in Butler, Pennsylvania. We want to thank you for joining us this evening for this historic NBC News special. I'm Tom Llamas.
And I'm Hallie Jackson in Washington. Join Lester Holt tomorrow night as he sits down with President Biden for his first interview since that attempted assassination on former President Trump. And join Tom and I tomorrow live from Milwaukee for our coverage of the Republican National Convention. Obviously, all of it on the heels of this difficult moment in American history. For all of us here at NBC News, thank you for watching our special coverage. Good night, and we'll see you soon.